advertised for today, which is September 3, 2025. And a couple of reminders that are sort of similar to what we have in our regular space. Please set your phones to mute or vibrate, which I better do myself. And for the duration of the meeting. Today's agenda and request to speak form is located in the back of the room if you want to speak. If you are here and you need a parking validation, please check with the clerk over here, and you'll get a get out of jail card to let you get out of the lot. So now we're going to proceed to our agenda for this morning's meeting. It contains a brief description of each item to be considered, except as otherwise provided by law. We cannot take any action on any item out of the agenda. Indeed, the agenda is not programmed for action items, but rather this is a workshop. And if you wish to address the board, please complete a speaker request form by filing clerk. And we have only one item on the agenda, but you must, if you want to speak, turn that in before that item is called. And you'll have, if you do want to speak, you completed the form timely and have 3 minutes to speak. And when you address the board, please address the board as a whole to the chair. And as I mentioned, we have only one item, no consent calendar, and we'll begin on discussion. This is a special meeting, so general public comments are not appropriate. Rather, you must address the actual item should you wish to speak. And Clerk, would you read the item?
Oath of office, Orange County Board Strategic Priorities Workshop. We have no request to speak on the item this morning.
All right. CEO.
Good morning, everybody. Situated a little bit. There we go. So today's, it's called a board meeting, but it's going to be a little or a lot more informal than a regular board meeting. We're calling it more of a workshop. And the format for today will be staff presentations, and we're looking for board feedback related to updates of the board priorities that were established back in 2012, and I'm going to go over those. And then we will be taking that feedback, and it'll make more sense as I go into the next slide. Take that feedback from the members of the board today, and then incorporate the updated strategies into our strategic financial plan. So we did kick off the county strategic financial planning process during the month of August. The strategic financial plan will be going to the board the last board meeting in December. And so that's when we will present formally for board approval the updated strategies. Between now, today, as we take that feedback, we will be working with the board over the next few months as we work on the strategic financial plan to do any fine tuning of these priorities as well. So today is not the last time that we will be talking about these priorities. So the priorities that were established back in 2012, these were established at the time that we were coming out of the Great Recession. And they made sense at that time. And they've been instrumental in getting us to where we are today, where we have a balanced budget. We have reserves that meet our target level. For example, but it's time for a refresh, for an update, to bring these priorities, I want to say into the century, right, is the term I use, but to make them consistent with what we're doing today. So some of what's in the priorities from 2012 still relevant. Others are just going to go away in their entirety. And so what staff and I have been working on over the last month or two is kind of brainstorming, looking at what the priorities are of the board. What have we been working on with you over the last couple of years? What have your priorities been? And so we took the current and we have some proposed priorities for your consideration and feedback today. So when we look at stabilize the budget and prepare for contingencies, what does that mean today? It means adopt a structurally balanced budget and make sure that we have reserves, right? That's what that means, adequate reserves. Develop a competent and cost-effective technology model. Well, we did that. Coming out of that recession period, one of the things that we were working on was centralization, shared services model of IT, did a whole new solicitation for IT services. And so that process has been complete, but how can we take it to the next level in the update of that priority? Succession plan and invest in workforce development. So that made sense at that time, because at that time we had a number of years, a significant number of years without an investment in our employees. Employees had not received, because of the financial situation, had not received cost of living adjustments for a while, and we just were not able to serve our employee population as we would like to be able to do. Our employees are still the highest priority, right, to us, because they are the ones that are serving the community. They are the ones that are administering all of the services that we deliver, whether it's county mandated service or it's on behalf of the state or federal government. Simplify or increase flexibility of administrative policies and procedures. Again, that made sense then, it still makes sense now, but we've done a lot of that. And it's something that is already ingrained into our culture, where we're always constantly looking for more effective and efficient ways to do our business. And then address and fund agency infrastructure. Coming out of the recession, we had a lot of deferred maintenance projects, deferred capital. And so we've spent, a decade trying to get caught up with that. But I think we need to bring this one right into our current way that we do business related to our infrastructure. So what the team and I talked about, what are our philosophy, right? What's our concept? What's our commitment? And in our documents, in our marketing, our branding, everything we do is our community, our commitment. And whether it's our family community, our employees, our community-based organizations that we work with, our nonprofits, right, other entities, or just members of the public, the residents of Orange County that we serve. It's our community and it's our commitment. And so that was our focus when we were looking to refresh the priorities. And we looked at our mission and our values. And so our priorities are going to be consistent with our mission and our values, because these are still good. It's still our mission, still our values. So for today, the priorities that we're presenting in a draft form, and that explain these high level. And then Kim's gonna come up and she's going to talk a little bit more in detail about the first one. And then Matt and Casey will come up and talk about the second one a little bit. Jessica's gonna talk about, Jessica and I are gonna talk about the third one. And then Jamie's gonna come up and talk about the fourth. So let me talk a little bit about how we got to these priorities and what it encompasses. And this is our starting point, right? We have to have a starting point for update of the priorities. So this is our starting point, and then we're looking for feedback, obviously, today to get us started, our kickoff, and then over the next couple of months as we work on our strategic financial plan. So the first, maintain a structurally balanced budget and industry standard reserve levels. This priority is consistent with the first priority that we had originally from 2012. So it doesn't really change much, but I think it acknowledges, it goes from stabilize the budget coming out of the recession Two, maintaining the structurally balanced budget that we have, because without our resources, right, without the money, we don't have the ability to get anything done. And then industry standard reserve levels. That was a term that we used. You hear us talk a bit about the GFOA, recommended reserve levels. It could be, for example, for the general fund, it is GFOA. For other funds, it could be a different standard that departments are using related to the reserve levels. The second is invest in the county's essential infrastructure. So that is referring to real estate development, our capital projects, our IT projects. So that is encompassing. Just think of these as the umbrella, right? And then under the umbrella, you have your capital improvement plan. You have your information technology plan. You have your real estate development, and Matt's going to talk about a policy that we'll be working with the board on developing related to development. And so, the other piece within the essential infrastructure is our departments. So we have waste and recycling, our landfills, public works, road, flood, our airport, parks, right, with OCCR. So it's not that we are doing, right, the CEO's office is doing it every month. It's the partnerships that we have with the departments and the other entities. And then third is advance key county initiatives, strategic priorities, and projects. And again, think of this as the umbrella for all of the initiatives that we are working on, our priorities, our projects. So under that is, for example, our OC Cares initiative, our master plan for aging, our housing strategy, our strategic financial plan, which has the strategic priorities. So these are meant to be, I would say, foundational and guidance to staff as we are working on the other items that get updated on an annual basis. So our strategic financial plan is updated on an annual basis. Our LEDGE platform, updated on a regular basis. Department's capital improvement plan, right? Our facilities master plan. Those things are updated on a regular basis and are the vehicle that we use to get things done. But this is the umbrella for that. And then the be the employer of choice. That just encompasses our current and future employees, and it encompasses just everything about being the best employer. To Jamie, I think you'll probably talk about retain, attract, and develop, right? The county family, our team members. So before I invite him up, I'm going to pause and see if there's any initial thoughts, feedback. It's meant to be more of a workshop than anything else. And more informal than formal.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Please go ahead.
I think this is a fundamentally flawed process. I found out only yesterday that it was a board meeting and that we were going to do this whole big dog and pony show. And I don't even have my chief here because she had a previously scheduled day off. This is not the way you do this. You do this by talking with each of us about our priorities at the board level. You do it by talking with the staff, and we come to some sort of a consensus. And then we have a board meeting where we can air all of this in front of the public. But right now, this is worse than sausage making. Every single one of us has been hit with this information for the first time, not even yesterday. This is the first time I've seen this packet. Is this something that the 3rd District supports? I don't know. Give me an opportunity to read it. Is this something that the board as a whole supports? I don't know. Let's air it in public and have a discussion about that in front of the public. Right now, all we've got are department heads in here and other folks. I appreciate them being here. I want to hear what they have to say, but it doesn't need to be done in this manner with this secrecy and jamming the board up like this. And don't be confused. The board gets jammed up with this. We can't, whenever something shows up on there and we have a discussion about it, maybe we can make some minor tweaks, but there is no way in the world that this board will be able to say, no, we don't want to go with that priority, or if you thought about something along these lines, call it a workshop or whatever. That isn't how these things get done, and I object to the format, I object to the secrecy in which this was developed, and I object to it all being sprung upon us in less than the last 24 hours.
Thank you, Lester.
Well, thank you Supervisor Wagner for being the heavy. I was actually feeling the same. And I'm surprised because I didn't even think this, I thought this, when it was on my calendar, I thought it was a meeting with you, like private meeting in my office, not private, but I thought it was a meeting in my office. And then we learned that it was this special meeting because I got the notice saying special meeting and I said, what is a special meeting? What is this about? And then we got the text from you. And so then to come to see that, I mean, these are not our board priorities. These are the staff's priorities for us. And I do take issue with that because that is something that often happens where before even talking to the elected officials, the staff decides on what the priorities are. And so maybe I agree with some of these, maybe I don't, I haven't had time to digest this, I just saw it just this moment. So I am concerned that we haven't had a chance. I mean, even in the graphic, it says that, basically this is CEO Real Estate's priority, number 2. Well, there's some things in here that I know you've heard me talk about, I've talked about in public, these are things that I care about, so, but we didn't get a chance to sort of weigh in on it. So, I don't know, I kind of agree, I wish that we could have had a chance to weigh in before we came to this whole meeting with everybody here, and we're supposed to, I guess, give our input in this public setting when we haven't had a chance to prepare. I mean, literally, Nick and I were rushing around last night because I was preparing for a different meeting that was scheduled for this morning, trying to figure out what am I supposed to bring to this meeting? Am I supposed to have a proposal? Am I supposed to come with suggestions? What are our priorities? Well, you shake your head no, Ms. Aguirre, but at the same time, if we don't agree with maybe these priorities, we don't have a way to convey that in a competent way here today because we haven't had time to digest. That's all I'm saying.
We don't have a way to even think about whether we agree or not, because we haven't seen any of this before.
It is agendized, there's no action being taken. This is more of a listening session. And I would suggest that we have those separate meetings, as we've heard. We're not actually being asked to adopt these strategy things. It's a workshop. And I always like to know what staff thinks. And so I would suggest that we just listen at this point. Then they'll think those meetings that have been referred to separately would be appropriate. Because I have some specific plans and priorities that I can't really fit in here. So that takes a separate effort, I think. So unless there's some further objection, or I guess if there's a motion to adjourn the meeting right now, I guess I could entertain that.
Supervisor Sarmiento had his hand raised.
Sorry?
Supervisor Sarmiento had his hand
I
raised.
can't see
It's hard
everybody,
to see.
sorry.
Go ahead and finish, Mr. Chair.
So I'm just suggesting that we listen and hear from staff. We need to hear always from staff, their ideas and thoughts. And so, okay, Supervisor Sarmiento, I'm sorry, I can't see everybody where I'm sitting. I have to kind of
No
branch
problem.
out a little bit.
Look, I don't want to pile on the process. I know that we can't give you, at least, in a setting like this, the challenge, I guess, is to be able to give you good direction and feedback because it's hard to do it on a moment's notice. So I think that's where, it's not as valuable as it could be if there's some time to kind of sit with it and understand how recommendations or suggestions we could make, better guidance would be helpful to you and the staff. The one thing, and I think it's not a bad idea. I just think maybe it was just logistically challenging, because seeing it at first glance, there are some things that, again, as was said, I agree with some other things I think are missing, like where are the people? Like where's the community here? I see a lot of focus on infrastructure, on projects, on initiatives, and I know ultimately those maybe flow down to folks, but I think if we're going to talk about strategic plans and priorities, this is a safety net agency at its core. We're a creature of the legislature. We're a creature of the state that's supposed to deliver to people that are in need. So to the extent that we will make sure, or at least I want to make sure that that is a priority of ours, that has to be included. But I do think that just the opportunity to sit down to listen, I guess, is not a bad one, but I don't think you're going to get the type of response, at least good direction, that maybe we would have had had we been able to live with this for a little bit, even if it's for a few days. But to the extent that we'll see it now, I always think that the direction should come from the board, and then the staff responds to the board as far as its priorities go, because we are elected by the people. And this is ultimately what these priorities are, as a reflection of the residents here in the county. So to the extent that I think we may have gotten it backwards a little bit, I certainly think it's a worthy opportunity for you to hear from us. But I think you want to hear from us in a way that we are well informed about what we're being asked to decide. So.
Yes, our quiet supervisor, Supervisor Wood.
I guess the question for me is, are we here to listen to staff and see what their priorities are? Is that the goal? Or are we here to hear from the board? Because if we're here to listen to the staff, then this is the right workshop. But if you're here to listen to us, I don't think this is the right workshop, because I do agree. We, like everybody else, we all got it yesterday, and this is the first time I've seen this package as well. And I appreciate everybody being here, but what is the purpose? Are we listening to staffs, hearing what their priorities are, and then having those meetings afterwards? Or are you here showing us what your priorities are and hearing our input? Because I don't think you can get a lot of input from us.
Okay, I think it works both ways, actually. We're here from staff, and anyone wants to comment as a board member, that's fine too. I think it's open, it's a workshop. We're not taking any action, we're not affirming anything particularly. So what's the board want to do? Do you want to continue on, or do you want to go back and wait for give sessions?
Can I ask another question, Mr. Chairman? So if we're, from what I'm hearing from you, we can listen, we can give input. What happens after this?
Oh, sure.
Because that would help me answer how much input do I put into this or not, right? Because if this is it, this is our only meeting after this workshop, besides the individual meetings, what's the next few steps after this?
So if you recall from my earlier comments, the purpose of today was presentation. Additionally, I did communicate that no prep was required for today, because the purpose of today was staff presentation. And so there was no expectation that any member of the board prepared. It was just really high level, our staff on the right track in understanding where we are today, because we see this, as I communicated earlier, as the beginning of the process. This is the beginning of the strategic financial planning process, and that the update of the priorities, which I've been asked in the past, right, to look at updating these priorities. And so we had to have a starting point so that everybody understood where are we at, how did we get here, 2012, 2015, they were reaffirmed. And then looking at where we are today, right? And it wasn't that we were going to get specific feedback or details from the board today. It was being able to communicate from a staff perspective on what we're working on. For example, I know that homelessness, right, prevention, prevention, right? All of it is important to this board, for example, right? So it's, how does that fit into this structure, right? Where does it fit in? The community is within, I would say that would be the third priority. The county has a responsibility to the community, which it does also include the infrastructure, and there's a cost associated with that. So this is kind of how to kind of kick it off and explain how from an operational perspective, staff would be implementing the board's priorities. So if the board wants to do this in a different way, we can do that. This is the format that was used in the past. It was a workshop. I don't know that any members of this board were here right back in 2012, 2015, because it was actually held over at the old county courthouse. And it was staff presentation and then just taking feedback from the board. So if you would like us to complete the presentation, we can do that, or we can just schedule individual meetings, because that was actually what the intent was after this, is that we would present, so we're all on the same page, and then we would be scheduling individual meetings, right, with each of the offices, getting feedback. But I thought it would be good for us to all be on the same page to start with.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, I think I would like us to hear the presentations. I mean, I think that the work has been done to prepare for today. I would like to respect staff's efforts and hear the presentations. The 2012, 2015 priorities, you know, I have long thought since I got here that those aren't really priorities. Those are just like government processes, right? So my concern initially with the proposed priorities is that these also are not really priorities, right? So 1 and 3 are like, it's required to maintain a structurally balanced budget and industry standard reserve levels. So that's not really a priority, that's just a requirement of law. So how do we, what I would be wanting to see is how do we change that concept to be something that is above and beyond what is required by law? What is our priority as it relates to the finances of the County of Orange? I have my own ideas, which I'll reserve, but that's how I'd like us to see priorities written. There's something that's above and beyond the requirement of law, something that's above and beyond the procedures, but there are things that we all share as a core value that we want to push forward. So to the extent that we're given an opportunity to, you know, change these proposed priorities, I hope that's still available.
Ask the council, are we required to establish strategic plan priorities? Is that a legal requirement? Is this something that's not a legal requirement? I didn't think it was.
No, it just assists the CEO and the budget office.
Staff and let them know where we're going.
I just want to clarify in case there was confusion about what I said. I wasn't talking about the law as it relates to strategic priorities. I was talking about it's a requirement of law that we maintain a structurally balanced budget. That's a requirement of law. That's what I'm referring to. The particular priority that's listed here is already the law. And I'm hoping we can talk about, okay, we know we want to have a balanced budget. We know we want to meet our levels of reserves according to industry standards. What do we want our finances to reflect? What do we want to say about the health of our financial picture here in Orange County? As an example, 88% of our budget comes from state and federal funds. Do we want to have a priority to reduce that reliance on state and federal funds? That's what I'm talking about in terms of changing the priorities so that it's something above and beyond what's already required and expected.
Okay, I think we should just listen to the presentation. Supervisor Nguyen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually here in 2012. I can tell you why. If I recall correctly, they're number 1, 2, and 5. When I got here, we were heading into recession. We made lots of cuts. We let go of hundreds of employees. And so the market was really, really difficult. The board itself cut their own budget as well and lay off their staff. So it was a very difficult time. And so the board at that time, at least that board, is making sure that we stabilize the budget and prepare for difficulties in the future. And that's why number 1 was there. Developing the competent and cost-effective technology model, if those of you remember, we had a really bad time with technology. We were on 5 years, 10 years, and end up in lawsuits after lawsuits because they would not complete the project, and hundreds of millions of dollars was spent, and we got nowhere. And so it became a priority of the board to start looking at, okay, where do we go from here in terms of the technology for the future, that it has to be cost effective and it has to actually work, not just for today, but also for the future. And we have to have vendors that actually will work with us versus in the middle of it, start suing us because they can't complete their project. And addressing the infrastructure part, building 16, where we were at, I was the one who started the process of looking at rebuilding all these buildings here. And there wasn't any funding. There was no way, and when I talked back then about public-private partnership, everybody, including some of my colleagues, thought I was crazy. And some of them made fun of me. Some of them made comments in their blogs as well, criticizing what a crazy idea that would be. But because we didn't have the funding for it, and I remember my office always looking at, I think it was building 14. It's been vacant for almost 20 years. And no one's been in there. And I didn't understand why we didn't take it down and why we aren't building. And what it came down to is we just don't have the funding for it, the future planning of infrastructure of county buildings. And so that's actually where all this came from and why it was our priorities, because where we were back then was really is I get in office, we hit recession, everything was cut for years. And then we're barely surviving, and then most of us all left the board. And then I come back, you're in a whole different time. But that's why we had those priorities. Yes, it's what we are mandated to do to stabilize our budget, but that's what those were in the past.
Thank you, Supervisor, for those comments. And then also Supervisor Foley, right? They were called priorities at that time. Maybe there's something more along the lines of guiding principles, right? Because we do have priorities within our ledge platform, within our other documents. And I think all of the feedback that I'm hearing is good, right? Because we have to update to make it what is current and what works for us today. But Supervisor Wynn, it is those priorities that guided me as CFO, as your budget director and your CFO since 2013, so over more than the last 10 years to get all of this done. Without those, I don't know that it would have gotten done. So I just want to stress the importance of today. For staff, it is important because this is your direction to us for implementation, and everything that we do when we're implementing and working on and updating our strategic financial plan, our ledge platform, right? It's your core values, right? Your guiding principles to us. Not that it's necessarily like the priorities.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I was going to suggest is why don't we get on with the presentation? I think staff worked it up. Again, you've heard us all, I think, agree that there's some issue with the way this was rolled out. I think, it could have been done differently, but I certainly appreciate the work that was put into it. I appreciate the effort of trying to understand how we can revisit this. It's incredibly important. And that's why I think I'm a little flat-footed in being able to give you as much quality feedback as you'd like. But to the extent that we could hear it, you meet with us later. I've got a hard stop at 12:15, I apologize. But to the extent that we, I certainly want to hear the presentations and maybe we should just get on with it.
I think we should go ahead and hear the presentations and then we'll have our individual meetings. We can do that individually. So you're up on the first one and then quickly you can move on to the next one.
Yes, we can. Good morning. Great comments, great conversation so far. I am Kim Ingleby, Chief Financial Officer for the county, and I'm going to sell as to why I think it's important to maintain a structurally balanced budget and industry standard reserve levels. So the county budget is complicated. It is $10.8 billion. It involves 22 distinct departments and 196 budgeted funds, each of which has a dedicated purpose and must be balanced, monitored, and accounted for. So just like with our personal finances, the county has monthly obligations. We have payroll, which runs about $130 million every 2 weeks. We have debt service payments, primarily for the CAS and CAN and the Bell building. We have utilities. We have known recurring payments that we need to make sure that we can make from the various 196 budgeted funds. So just as the county has recurring expenditures, we also have stable inflows of revenue, property taxes, charges for services, fees, and state and federal funding to provide those services and programs on their behalf. Of these revenue sources that I just listed, only property tax revenues are considered discretionary. The county gets 5% of every property tax dollar, the lowest in all of the counties in the state, and similar to our own personal finances, the county has to live within its means. All of the county's ongoing expenditures should be funded with ongoing known revenues. This is a structurally balanced budget. When the ongoing funding isn't there, the gap is being filled with one-time solutions that once used will no longer be available, and this is not sustainable. Year over year, our revenues and expenditures will fluctuate, sometimes to the benefit of our budget and sometimes to the detriment. When it benefits the county, we are able to address our one-time needs, such as with equipment, capital projects, and even our strategic priorities. All of these uses and decisions are brought to the board through our budget report process. When the opposite occurs, when it's a detriment, and a gap is identified between our planned expenditures and revenues, the county has to have a plan, the county has to be prepared. And so for these reasons, the 5-year strategic financial plan is essential, just as the county's reserves are. So it is very easy to look at the county's cash and the balance in our reserves and conclude that the county can spend more, can do more. But as previously mentioned, the county has known monthly obligations and needs to ensure those obligations are met. In addition, for many of our funding sources, many of our allocations and our grants, the county is paid on a reimbursement basis, meaning the county must first incur the cost, the county must first pay out the cash, and then a claim is filed to seek reimbursement. So this is why maintaining the county's fund balances and our reserves is so important. Our reserves provide flexibility. It offers resources for unanticipated or cyclical economic downturns, emergencies, or catastrophic events. Our reserves provide flexibility and offers resources for mitigating the volatility of revenues and expenditures and temporary cash flow shortages, such as with the timing of our claims for reimbursement. Our reserves also signal to the various credit rating agencies of the financial health of the county. We could not get our AAA rating for years and years until we demonstrated we met best practices for our reserve balances. And it took years to build some of those reserves up to the required level. Each fund in the county has a specific purpose and maintains a balance that can only be used for that designated purpose. It's restricted. Some examples include our debt service funds, the John Wayne Airport funds, waste and recycling funds,
And there are also some funds that are maintained that are specific to our major revenue sources, such as realignment, Prop 172, and our Mental Health Services Act, soon to be Behavioral Services Act. Here, the excess funds are received and they are held until eligible expenditures are identified. And the purpose of these funds is to provide that needed flexibility as the revenues and costs fluctuate year over year, and thereby reduce the need for general fund and negatively impact our county operations. There are two primary reserve accounts maintained for the county as a whole. One is the budget stabilization and one is for contingencies. Both are managed by the county executive office. Both are compliant with the county's reserve policy. And the county reserve policy does come to the board each year with a strategic financial plan. Both are maintained per the Government Finance Officers Association, that GFOA, the best practices and recommendations. The budget stabilization reserve is just as it sounds. It's to provide a stable budget when there are fluctuations in general purpose revenues, to cover one-time capital investments or opportunities, to provide resources for statutory changes stemming from federal or state actions. And the balance in the budget stabilization reserve is set at 2 months of the general fund operating revenue. This is to keep the county going for 2 months should all other funding stop. In a similar fashion, the contingency reserve provides funding should the county need to glide down during a major unanticipated or economic downturn due to emergencies or catastrophic events. This balance is set at 15% of ongoing general purpose revenues, and this equates to about 2 months of the county's discretionary revenue. Neither reserve is meant to backfill lost revenue on an ongoing basis. It's just to allow time for the county to react in the event and adjust as needed. Whereas in personal finance, the guidance is to be able to cover 6 months of one's personal monthly expenditures, the county maintains about 2 months worth. So just as a reminder, the county's payroll is about $130 million every 2 weeks. That's $280 million a month. Our obligations for debt service, for our rent, for our leases, for utilities, that's another $13 million a month. The county provides hundreds of programs and services for the community. We have an airport providing transportation for our residents to the world. We have landfills. We have residents that rely on us. All of this, all that I've shared this morning is at the core of the county's strategic financial plan. In the plan, the departments project out 5 years. They identify their major projects, and that's going to take planning and resources to achieve. And this is best done when we have a structurally balanced budget, one where our ongoing costs are funded by ongoing revenues, one where the county's reserves are maintained and prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we just want to keep moving. May we have the next?
Thank you, Chair. Matt is going to present related to real estate development.
Good morning, supervisors and department heads. So I'm speaking to the 2 priorities that were existing in the prior priorities. These are not necessarily staff's priorities. These are adapted from the prior one. So obviously we're looking for anything we missed, any updates that we need to do. The first priority really relates to Supervisor Wynn's point about the public-private partnerships, the ability to redevelop underutilized county properties to benefit the county, the residents, the community, looking to maximize revenue while ensuring that the county isn't at risk. And to that end, we're going to be working through the strategic financial plan process to develop a county property development policy that will really define and create uniformity with how we do these projects. And that will really kind of look at balancing the benefits and the burdens of development on our property. We're maximizing revenue. How do we want to structure them as far as that revenue goes? And that's something that we'll be continuing to work on. And this is really about like I said, our P3 developments. So you're looking at, your Dana Point Harbors, the Laguna Niguel project, possibly some projects that we could do on El Toro, and really looking to create a standardization of that process and a consistency with how they're done from the board's perspective, so that we know that we're balancing all of those priorities. The second priority relates to the modernization of our own facilities. So that's to benefit our employees and also ensure that the infrastructure and service delivery meet the needs of the public and of the county. And this is really exemplified by the building that we're in, with the new board meeting room, the sister building across the courtyard that has the one-stop. And that was really an advancement of that service delivery model that we're able to achieve with this. And this is going to be highlighted by the next step in the facility strategic plan process. With input from you all, we're developing an RFQ first and then an RFP for the next phases of the Civic Center facility strategic plan. We're also working on the Workforce Reentry Center in Supervisor Sarmiento's district. And that is really looking at that service delivery and the benefits. Being able to update our infrastructure and our facilities to be able to serve the community and to be able to serve our departments. So I just wanted to keep that quick, but obviously these two priorities function on, focus on kind of the utilization of county property, but obviously at the county we do a lot more things with the department, right? From the big things like Dana Point Harbor to the small things like donated space agreements for blood drives, to leasing property for all of our departments, to building facilities for all of our departments. So we're looking to the board either to expand or focus these priorities so that we can make sure that we are achieving all of the right goals. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And just re-emphasizing, right, that this is high level, right? So Matt provided a few examples of projects, but like you said, Matt, there's a lot going on at the county. And so Casey Rostenberg, our CIO, is up next to talk about the county's IT infrastructure.
Good morning. Thank you for your time today. Obviously, IT is probably one of the most complex things that you have to deal with in a county. We effectively have 22 different businesses, airports, revenue collection, parks. And to provide those technology solutions in an economic way to where we can ensure that every dollar we can goes back to the agencies so we can provide services to our community. So really every decision that we make at OCIT is fundamentally predicated on enabling the county to provide our residents with secure technology, access to services and information that they need. It's no more complex than that, right? So certainly over the last decade, Michelle shared that earlier, agencies used to manage their own IT, and certainly being able to bring the majority of agencies under a centralized technology framework has really paid off for the County of Orange. Technology solutions that an agency in and of themselves may not be able to afford is now affordable because of the economies of scale that we were able to put in place by that centralization effort. And we're quite unique if you look at IT organizations, county IT organizations across the state. Very few are running independent service funds, and very few are running a centralized IT environment. So with that, our primary focus is broken into three areas: resiliency and availability of infrastructure. So ensuring that the access that the agencies need and our residents need are available 24/7. 20 years ago, it was 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Now the expectation from our public and our agencies is to have access to the data and information they need immediately. So certainly looking at, again, going down that cost savings priority is, for example, we've managed our own voice for the better part of 60 years. It's a large infrastructure, very expensive to manage. We're looking at one of our major strategic initiatives in the next 12 months is to do away with the majority of handsets, phones on your desk, for a virtual soft phone solution. There is a huge amount of dollar savings just from the labor it takes to maintain those phones, the phones themselves, the back-end technology that makes all that work. Certainly, COVID was a bad time for everyone, but it allowed us, from a technology perspective, to do things in months that could have taken decades. And so now we're going to continue to leverage our focus on monetizing the value of moving additional things, not just Teams meetings, but voice to that technology. We also have a lot of the private sector circuit providers, AT&T, Verizon, these big frontier companies. They all want to get out of the copper business. We still have a lot of systems that are running on copper. So one of the strategic things we want to do is proactively get away from copper as quickly as possible, so that we're not in a situation where the state finally approves one of the Assembly Bill measures to allow providers no longer to support copper. So that's one of the, obviously, resilient and infrastructure connectivity priorities. Strategic IT with development with the agencies. If we don't understand what the agencies need from a technology perspective, we're not doing our jobs. So we spend a lot of time in working with the agencies, understanding what their business needs are, and customizing as much as we can technology to meet those business needs. So there's a couple of different initiatives that we're proposing via the IRC process that'll help us remotely and thus more quickly be able to service the end users as it relates to laptops and PCs and the devices, those 17,000 devices that we collectively manage for some other agencies that staff use every day. And we think that there's a significant subset of our users that we can just have them use VDI instead of expensive laptops and PCs. Managing VDI in the cloud from a labor perspective is significantly less. The cost of refreshing laptops and PCs every few years, very expensive. So we're going to really work with the agencies to see where there's some sweet spots there to possibly reduce 5,000 to 10,000 laptops and PCs to VDI solutions. Lastly, cybersecurity and regulatory compliance. There's not a day that we wake up that some agency or some company has been hit by a cyber attack. We, the far majority, have not been, and it's because of the support of the supervisors, certainly our staff and the department heads, that we were able to accomplish that. We cannot lose sight of the criticality of keeping our systems secure. We've 24/7, 365. We've got eyes on glass, ensuring that that we maintain a secure environment for our data and the systems that allow us to do what we do for the county every day. The other issue that we need to work with is data classification. And why is data classification important? Obviously, data provides us with a lot of information, and not having a good handle on who has what data and how that data flows through all of our systems is really going to cause us problems down the road if we want to start leveraging AI, for example, data analytics, all the things that we know that intrinsic value of all that data has for us to better serve the community. So there's going to be a real focus from our part to work with the agencies to do data classification, data retention, so that we know where that data is, who has it, and what are the implications from a compliance perspective. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Okay, so advanced key county initiatives, strategic priorities and progress. So I think this is one that is a little more complex. So I'm going to kick it off and then I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. So for members of the board, right, I know your priorities related to the community because I hear you, I see you out in the community, right? So I have that understanding. But is within what lies below this, what we're calling a priority, which I think we're going to end up changing, right? To guiding principle, or Casey, you used the word framework, which I really liked also. I've used the word umbrella. I think we're going to develop, right, a new structure for ourselves.
but it's, and Kim talked about, say, the budget, right? And you all know, we get 5 cents, there's never enough money. So one of the things that we talked about internally was, how do we take everything that we're working on, everything that's important to us, and use our existing resources, right? Because we are fiscally responsible. And then leverage whatever other resources we can, right? Whether it's private industry, community-based organizations, members of our delegation and those relationships. And we've talked about that with all of you, probably especially over the last year as I've been in this position, right? And as we've developed the LEDGE platform and improved that process in working with all of you. So how do we take our strategic financial plan, our master plan for aging, our OC Cares initiative, the Care Plus program you see here, it was like our initiative to have a veteran cemetery, all of those things, and take it to the next level for our employees, for the community, for the citizens of Orange County. And it's through the leveraging, right, and the working together, not just the county, but all of us, right, in the county. And I know Jessica and I had a few meetings, and Kim is sometimes involved also, right, depending on availability, with just organizations like OC Grantmakers. Thank you, Yossi, right, for that connection. And just, this was a vision that I had, I would say 10 years ago, was to do more collaboration with the community, with private, with those entities throughout the county, right, that also have the same interests, whether it's homelessness or housing or development, whatever it is. But how do we bring it all together and wrap it up so that we're all working together to get things done? And so Jessica's going to come up and talk a little bit more about our legislative infrastructure and project funding advocacy, and kind of what we're trying to do is raise the bar, right? Take it to the next level. And so Jessica, take it to the next level for us.
Thank you, everyone. Jessica Witt, Chief Operating Officer here at the county. So I think as looking at this framework or structure, one of the things I think of as being a long-term county employee is making sure that every county employee sees themselves in these goals, right? Everyone wants to be a part of something that the board thinks is important, right? That the county is all working towards. And I think this is also one of them. For example, when I was in Public Works, infrastructure was a lot of what we did. So that's the goal I would have seen myself in. And now, in the work I do in the CEO's office, I see myself in some of these larger kind of county-wide initiatives, and want to kind of walk you through specifically what we're doing in the legislative side of the house. Because we know that funding is scarce. We can't fund all of these priorities, but we know they're important and we want to fund them. And so one of the things we're doing this year is, first off, we're starting earlier. We know what it feels like. These deadlines come at us really quickly, and we don't want, we want to make sure that the board has time to give us their input. We want to make sure that we're hearing from departments, from the community-based organizations, from our local partners and local government. We want to make sure we all have time for that. And the only way to do that is to start early. And sometimes that is with limited information, right? We're sometimes making our best guess as to what are going to be the priorities of the state and federal government. But what we're looking at through the this legislative infrastructure and project advocacy, funding advocacy strategy is really trying to streamline that. And that really starts with creating, what is that workflow going to be? How are we going to gather this information from the board, from departments, from the community? How are we going to get all this information together? And one of those key tools that we're using, and you hear about this a lot, is the strategic financial plan. And so actually this year, one of the things we did in collaboration with our Friends in Budget, everyone needs Friends in Budget, is that we've added, when departments are submitting projects for the strategic financial plan, there actually can note if they're shovel ready. Because we know that's an important thing in terms of earmarks, in terms of, some of our state budget requests that we have opportunities to submit, and some of the grant funding opportunities as we're looking at Prop 4 and its implementation. So that's just one thing that we're looking at, is having folks identify those shovel-ready projects. And really making sure that we're gathering all that information centrally. So we know there's some things that we always are gonna know for these funding requests that are gonna be important. We need to know the basic project summary. We need to know whose district is it in, because that's important, right, at the state and federal level. So we wanna make sure we have that information, so we know if a board member has an opportunity to speak to a member of the delegation, we can sort that list and say, okay, here's all the ones that are in this particular district. So these are ones that that particular member might be interested in helping us out on. So we're trying to really just have a more robust system on all of these key projects so that we can be more competitive when those opportunities arise. We're also looking at with our departments, because they are key partners, because they are subject matter experts on so many of these, is making sure we know who that central point of contact is in the department. Oftentimes it'll be our ledge coordinator, because that's who we work with, but also making sure we know who those key subject matter experts are. So whether we're updating fact sheets, or we need someone to come help brief, or even help meet and with a member, things like that, we need to know who those key people are up front. And then also just making sure, again, it's those timelines, having clear timelines for departments and making sure that we are getting, you'll see us bringing, we are already starting the conversations, and we're looking to get meetings on with all of your offices as well to figure out what some of those priorities are going forward, so that we can make sure that we're getting not only your priorities, also being able to kind of show you some of the ideas that departments are working on to see if any of those things are of interest to you. That you would be willing to help us push forward. And so those are some of the things that we're just working on in this legislative strategy, just trying to be more mindful. We know we have tight timeframes. We know we're looking for funding in a lot of sources. We're hoping by having this more centralized project that's really going to help us out. And we'll, as we're gathering that information, we'll be looking forward to your feedback on things that we're missing, right? What would be helpful to you when you're out in the community talking to people about specific projects that we have here at the county. We need all of that information, and because these are the projects that we know are important to the community. We want to make sure that we're advocating for and bringing as much funds to the county.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. So, Jamie, while you're walking up, I want to first thank Phoebe, right, for being here. Our employees are beyond, right, important to me. I am one of those employees, and I've been here 36 years. And Jamie, you're already doing a fantastic job when it comes to being right with our employees, and just excited to hear what you have to say, because the employees are really important. They're the ones serving the community on our behalf. So take it away, Jamie.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everybody. Michelle said it best. The employees are what allow us to do all of the things that we're trying to accomplish in the county. If it wasn't for them, we couldn't do what we do today. And so it really is important for us to really look at how we can make us, the county, the employer of choice. And so we want to be the employer of choice. When I took on this role, I looked at HR as kind of like yes, I grew up in HR a little bit, but I also had a very strong background for about 10 to 12 years in the financial world. And I recognized something from that world that I'm introducing into our world here as we become that employer of choice, is how do we become the employer of choice if we don't even know what that means as a county? What does it mean when we say we want to be the employer of choice? What does it mean when we want to set ourselves up for some initiatives? And how do we know if we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish? So I'm bringing data into our world. So when I talk about being the employer of choice, I'm looking at how we look at the initiative I have in HR is RAD. How do we retain our employees? How do we attract the best and the brightest? And then how do we continue to develop them? And so that's a great catchphrase, RAD. Sounds great. Can make little stickers for it, put a little orange on it. But the reality of it is that each one of those items comes with very specific activities that we're going to need to undertake in HR and as a county to accomplish that, to become the employer of choice. So employer of choice, when you think about retaining, it's developing activities that improve our employees' satisfaction and engagement. So what can we do to make sure that the current workforce that we have wants to be here, wants to talk about the County of Arc, wants to bring people into the workforce, right? So what are we looking at when we do that? That's where we start to develop those then very specific goals within them. We talk about doing employee recognition programs. We talk about doing stay interviews. We look at career pathing and internal mobility programs, something that we don't currently have. We look at engaging our employees on a regular basis to find out actually what they need, what they want, what they desire as well. I came into my role and I sent an invite to 250 of my staff and asked this question to all of them to set up a meeting with me. What do you want to be when you grow up? With the sole goal of understanding what the future of my HR team looked like, so that way I could drive my HR team, but then further drive what each of our department needs within those employees that are out there. So what is it that's going to keep them staying here? We then want to look at how we are going to attract employees. What does that mean? We're going to look for those activities that strengthen our employee branding as well as our recruitment process. So, employer branding campaigns. We really want to focus in on like what it looks like to be the employer of choice. We want to look at unifying all of our efforts, all of our departments, all of our teams as it relates to what is the employer, who is the County of Orange. We want to look at partnerships with schools and universities, and we want to look at streamlining our recruitment experience as well as looking at competitive compensation benefits package. Developing actually what I call as a pay philosophy, a compensation philosophy, something we've never had here at the County of Orange. Finally, we want to look at how we develop our current staff because we want to keep them again. Yes, we have the retain option, but we want to also continuously develop our staff. So we want to look at those activities that invest in employees' growth and skill building. So what does that mean? This is where that succession planning comes in. The 2012 initiative actually had succession building. Unfortunately, I think we kind of slowed down on that. That's why it's coming back. But we really want to look at what our teams look like and how we plan for their development and their growth. Look at individual development plans. Personalize the career goals with training milestones to help us build, and that becomes our step one in our succession planning. We want to further develop some of our leadership programs, mentorship, as well as just our current environment as it relates to this. Having this type of strategy to become the employer of choice, I could do all of those things, but without metrics and identifying like how we have been successful will also be critically important to this. So when we look at what employer of choice means, we're looking at investing in our staff from a retaining, attracting, developing perspective. But what this does is allow us to build a highly qualified staff that will then further support our mission statement, our vision, and our values. And then we will continue to develop and strengthen our county culture in a sense to bring career advancement, employee growth, and create a respectful workplace for all of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie was our last speaker, so I am going to wrap it up for us with some final comments. But before I do that, I didn't get to speak at the beginning about another reason for this, right? And the timing of it. I'm not going to be here next year, okay? This process is very important. And I hope you are taking it seriously. It is not a waste of your time. It is not a waste of time for the department heads or for my chiefs. This is the foundation of the county's future. I tasked my chiefs. When I am gone, they are going to lead the way on behalf of the board. That is my expectation. That each of them are going to take an area of responsibility. They're going to work with your department heads. And they are going to support and lift up your next CEO. And they are going to serve the community. You have long-term, outstanding chiefs here that I see before me. Just amazing people that I am so proud to work with.
honor to serve this board over the last year. And I have learned so much, and I think you've learned so much also, at least some of you. And it's been an honor to work with the department heads that, that are back there today and took the time to be here. Thank you. So we'll be setting up individual briefings now that we're all on the same page. And I'm so happy to take your feedback because it's been instrumental in the work that we do every single day. And, the constructive criticism is welcome, right? In a professional manner. I love it. It makes us a better county. It makes us better able to serve our community. So thank you for that. As we get all of the feedback from the individual offices, then we'll need to develop what we're calling a one-pager to summarize everything, right? And then that is what will end up, I'm assuming, right, being what we incorporate into our final strategic financial plan document. So there's still a lot more work to do. This, again, was just intended to be our kickoff. So, Chair, I am done if you would like to adjourn the meeting.
Well, for that, let me go down the row here for any final board comments. Supervisor Wagner?
I'm good, thanks.
Supervisor Sarmiento?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank, our CEO, thank the department heads, thank everybody who is trying to help us, in this process to create good goals, priorities, a strategic plan. I think, again, it's a worthy effort. I think we may disagree on the process, but we certainly think it's something that's aspirational, it's something that's necessary, and I think it's a good time to revisit it. I certainly think, we'll have a better vision going forward, and I think that's what a lot of us spoke about. Like, what is the vision? So this will be our opportunity. So I certainly appreciate the time and thought that went into this. I just, again, feel like as we have more discussions, I'll be able to provide better quality feedback for you all to, consider as you're going through this. So thank you.
Supervisor Wynn?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you.
Vice Chair, go ahead.
Thank you. So I echo the comments. I know, Michelle, this is your baby. This county is your baby. We know that. And you have invested your whole adult life here. And I have great respect for you and the work that you've done here, the service that you've given to the county and to the residents. And I know that this effort was intended to help us. I don't have any dispute over that. I think where I am still not quite there is that it feels operational to me. And so I think we have to take these are great priorities for the departments, right? It's an operational plan, which I think is important and necessary. But we need to take it to the next level, which makes it more of like a policy priority plan for us as elected officials. And that goes to this idea about a vision and, what do we want to be able to say 4 years from now that we accomplished that was on our list of priorities. So that's where I'm hoping that, we can kind of have a reset and have those conversations and take this framework that you've provided that I think is exceptional for the departments and the operations of the departments and get it to the next phase, which would be more of like a policy and the board's value statements, basically. The shared value statements. We got 5 of us here, so we got to find what we share in common, which is a lot.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair, for those comments. And so I think as part of the next steps, we'll want to make sure that we provide you with, a copy of the county's current mission and the vision statement, the business values, to see if, because those were displayed, right? We have those, but we can email those out also.
are those still your core values, right? Because the county does have a mission, vision, value statements. And so we
Maybe
do.
I'm using the wrong word, but
No, but I totally
I'm
get
not
it.
trying to change this. I think
No,
this is
it's
fine.
that umbrella though, right? So maybe there are, like, what was presented today was an update of what existed previously, right?
Mhm.
That works for implementation, but are there those guiding principles that are the umbrella over those four, right? That are the board's direction policy, right? So, and that's exactly what I needed to hear today, right? It's like maybe there's something that's still above those four, maybe those get tweaked, but we'll work on that together. And this is what, right, it gets everybody thinking about what those next steps are and what that overarching structure might be.
So I'm just gonna go back to the example because I think it's the easiest one, right? So we heard from Ms. Ingleby about the, restrictions on our budget and about what is a structurally balanced budget in terms of best practices. What does that look like? Okay, so the priority for the department is to make sure that you have all the funds in all these different accounts, so that you have 2 months of reserves in the budget stabilization, 15% or 2 months of reserves in the contingencies, and that you are not spending money on what is one-time money on ongoing cost items, okay? I was listening. Okay, so, but what is the board's priority? My priority as it relates to the budget to help you to implement what you described is to reduce our reliance on state and federal mandates and generate revenue without adding taxes. That's my priority, right? So I think we have to think about it in terms of, everybody else has their own probably, but we have to think about it in terms of what's the priority to get us to where your goal is, okay? So that's what I'm hoping we can start to change the way we're looking at what a priority is. That's my takeaway. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair. If I may make a few comments. Strategic plans, in the general sense, are difficult. I tend to look more for specifics in plans. I'll give you a couple examples, like our OC Cares initiative. We're working on that for more than 7 years. That, to me, is a separate strategic priority and should be spelled out accordingly. Our veteran cemetery, could also put that. Maybe that should be an item that is separately listed. You can put some things into that. The budget for me is not easy, because it changes. It's a living document. You keep going all the time. And what do you do when you have an airport fire? That's what's in the budget. So we develop a plan, then we don't develop it until the crisis hits. I see that happening in so many things, like homelessness. We're directed a lot by lawsuits. We have to do. And if I had thought about it better 6, 7 years ago, I would have directed more funding to prevention, because then we wouldn't have so much need to do these other things. That's a very cost-effective way of addressing that. And we will be moving forward with some of that at the meeting with a lot of nonprofits, and we are looking for more funding, because I don't want to take away from what I've been doing, which only makes Michelle happy, and Kim too, maybe. So I'd like to see more specifics. You get down to agency infrastructure, that's kind of vague. I'd like to see a listing. What do we need? What do we have? What surplus? Kind of bang, bang, bang that out, because it's so general, I can't relate to it. So I'm looking for more specificity whenever we can. And when something gets done, you take it off the list. And you go for it. Every year is a little different as the things we have going. And I see some things that I tend to be project oriented. For example, my police initiative with the Fort Police Department, we're putting behavioral specialists as part of the department, is very successful. I'm looking to expand that to other departments, other cities. So that I don't think you list here separately. That's something that makes a lot of sense. Homeless prevention, that needs to be countywide, so we're working on that. And there needs to be some statement in here about homelessness. It's been such a bugaboo, such a priority, such a drain on our resources, and will continue to be if we don't start doing some things. So I like more specificity and not so much the general statements can be pushed up. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Just a second.
We're sitting through this. Given all that. He can do it all, can he?